Good day. Welcome to the Cory Morgan Show. Now we're getting into fall now. The parliamentary session has begun. Crazy world events are happening. The doldrums of summer are over. Not that we ever had a shortage of things for me to rant and rave and go on and report about, but it gets busier in winter. Everybody kind of tunes out for the summer to try and enjoy life for a little, and now it's back to that serious world. And we got some serious stuff going on, yet there's comical spins going on at the same time. So we'll be covering a lot today. I got a guest coming on, Dr. Kelly Sundberg. He's from Mount Royal University. He's a criminologist. And we're going to talk about immigration and crime levels. Yeah, it's quite a combination to cover and dig into. But, we don't hear about that challenge that comes. We got many immigration-based challenges. That's another one of the ones. And how are we dealing with social disorder and other things? Whether it's immigrants being victims of crime or committing crimes, we've got a lot to cover. So as I see Mavis checking in and others, who's that? Mr. Stanley. Yes, this is a live show for many watching. So hey, use that comment scroll, send those comments my way. Ask questions of the guests, things like that. I appreciate it. I don't necessarily read them all out, but I do see them, and it lets me know there's somebody out there listening beyond just my mom. Good to see you there too, Paradoxy. So let's get on to kind of a general subject I want to cover, but it got me going a bit. And it's about conservatives in general and where they stand with things. So usually celebrity endorsements in elections, they're not much of consequence and they're disregarded by most people. The case, though, with Taylor Swift's endorsement with Kamala Harris is something different. I mean, Taylor Swift has hit a level of stardom that's unprecedented in the amount of revenue she has, and of course, even more importantly, in her fan loyalty. I mean, the self-styled Swifties who follow her, they're legion, and they follow her with a cult-like loyalty. Swift's endorsement of Harris won't change many votes among those who've already made up their minds where they're going to make their mark on the ballot, but it could bring out hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people to vote who would have stayed at home otherwise. Those kinds of numbers can swing an election. I mean, we wish people were more moved by policies than herd mentality, but that's not always the case. With left-leaning people dominating the narrative from public figures, the public can start to feel inclined to drift towards what they feel is a majority view, even if it really isn't the majority view, just the ones with the big pulpits. That's why lawn signs are such a priority for political campaigns. It's not that candidates need people to recognize their names so much as they want to create the impression that they're enjoying popular support. If a cul-de-sac is dominated with signs from one particular candidate, folks can be inclined to go with the flow and join their neighbors and vote that way. There are many prominent people who are conservatives. You just don't hear from them very often. The best way to tell if an actor in Hollywood, because there are a lot of conservatives in Hollywood, but the way to tell if they're conservative is if you don't know what their political leanings are. They keep it to themselves because it'll greatly reduce their casting opportunities if they break ranks. The leftist actors never shut the hell up about it. Think of it like vegans. I mean, vegans, they're a tiny minority, but they sure aren't a quiet one. People with normal dietary habits don't feel compelled to announce it to the world at every opportunity. Vegans, though, you can't get through more than 5 minutes with one before they find a way to slip their veganism into a conversation. And if you looked at it only that way, you'd think vegans must be the majority in the world if you measure it by who brings it up and who doesn't. Conservatives win when they just come out and be conservative. And let's look at another example. The recent release of the movie Reagan. Actors Dennis Quaid and Jon Voight are among the few outspoken conservatives in Hollywood, and they happily took parts in the movie celebrating one of the greatest presidents of all time. Now, despite little to no hype from conventional media, the movie had a fantastic opening weekend. Citizens were eager to watch it. So then the critics came out and they panned the film. And this is where things become more telling. There's a popular website for those who might not be familiar. They're called Rotten Tomatoes. It aggregates film ratings, and it has two types of ratings: the ratings from the critics and the ratings from the audiences. Reagan got positive reviews from 21% of the critics. Terrible. The movie got an incredible 98% positive review, though, from audiences. Yes, the people actually watching it loved it. The critics are trying their worst or their best to make it look terrible. They couldn't convince people, though, that a fantastic movie is a bad one. The critics are part of the establishment, and the establishment in our culture wars swings left. They're in the fringe, though, and we should make a note of that. Look a little closer to home here. The trajectory of Ralph Klein. He was one of the most popular premiers of all time in Canada during his time in office. The establishment relentlessly attacked Klein. Pundits assured us he was committing suicide politically when he told the unions to go to hell and shrunk government. Klein then won a bigger majority. So the critics howled when he continued to cut the budgets. And Klein won an even larger majority. The only time when Klein started to lose support was when he started getting tired and throwing money at problems rather than standing up for taxpayers. That's when he was encouraged to go to pasture by his own party. You know, I've heard so many times when I have candid conversations with business leaders, politicians, and others saying, I wish I could have said that when they're talking about something I said on X or something I wrote in a column. Well, guess what? They can say that. In fact, they must say that. What's that? Pretty much anything unapologetically conservative. Though they don't have to be as abrasive as I am about it. In staying silent or quietly speaking of conservative principles as if there's something to be ashamed of, prominent conservatives are allowing a minority of leftists to own public discourse. When conservatives dodge questions on conservative stances, it makes them look sneaky and implies that there's something wrong with their stance. Call for small government, guys. Call out the unions. Don't shy away from the need to cut spending and lay off useless bureaucrats. Don't be afraid to say we can't handle the current volume of immigrants. Point out the utter failure of the Indian Act and the reserve system. Try this one. Call a man and a woman a woman. Yeah, crazy, isn't it? It's common sense principles, and when conservatives own them, the voters reward it. Come out of the closet and be who you are, a conservative. You'll feel so much better being yourself in the open without shame or apologies. And that's how, guys, we can swing the needle from the false discourse that makes it sound like that we're all left-leaning. We aren't. It's just a minority of loud leftists. That's what's got me going today there, guys. Woo! Mr. Stanley saying, non-drinkers are the same as vegans, just got to boast. Okay, fair enough. I think I bring up quite often my dry status too. It's been over 5 years. Hey, I like to pat myself on the back about it. I guess vegans like to pat themselves on the back too. Similar sort of analogy and a fair one to point out, and that's fine. But I like to think at least, former drunks are still less annoying than bloody vegans can be. Though, I mean, again, it's variable. All right, let's talk about something. I said there was something serious that happened, yet it's comical. People have probably been watching it. And I'm going to give the backstory. Though, I mean, it's amazing news going on in Israel, the Middle East, and Israel hasn't taken credit for it yet, but somebody really took a beating to Hezbollah through pagers. So let me explain how this all kind of worked. Israel has been at war with Hezbollah for years. Hezbollah launches thousands of rockets and spawns terrorist attacks against Israel, launching those rockets into residential areas. I mean, they're just a pest, a dangerous, terrible terrorist pest sitting within Lebanon and attacking Israel from outside. Now, a lot of them had realized, because they aren't terribly sharp, terrorists typically aren't all that bright, but they did, one of them realized, whoa, we keep getting vaporized and they seem to know where we are all the time. Yes, they figured it out. Digital cell phones gave a location of where the terrorists were. Israel was tracking it and wiping them out. So one of them had a brainstorm, said, let's go analog. This way they can't track our locations. We will communicate through pagers, old school technology pagers. So they went out looking and they found a source for pagers, and they got thousands of pagers. So all the little Hezbollah buddies could chatter with each other and do their terrorist planning through pagers. They wouldn't have their locations tracked. But Israel, probably, I don't know who else would have done it, caught wind of it, figured it out, somehow intercepted those pagers and put a little bit of explosive in every one of them. And then when the pagers went all throughout, all the little Hezbollah terrorists all over out there, they waited. I mean, the patience is just amazing, the planning. And then they sent whatever it was with the programming in it saying, okay, it's time. So yesterday, all at once, thousands of pagers exploded all across Lebanon and Syria. And these weren't giant explosions. We were talking about an ounce or so of explosives. But when you have it tight to your body, it can be pretty devastating. And you see, Hezbollah sorts, you know, they don't wear belts a lot because when they want to go out a-raping, which is what, you know, Hamas and Hezbollah like to do, belts hold them up, slow them down. So they keep their pagers in their front pocket. Well, what happened then? Oh yeah, they blew their balls off. Thousands of them. It was brilliant. It was beautiful. And the memes, the mockery, the laughing over it as all of these Hezbollah terrorists got neutered. And others were injured, an assortment of other ways. But these pagers all went off. Some picked them up, and yes, it blew up in their faces, literally. I don't have much pity because these are literally terrorists. What better way to narrow down who the ones you were targeting are? Nobody else on the planet is still using pagers. You know, they haven't been used since the 90s. Only Hezbollah members would have a pager on them. Magnificent timing. Somebody pointed out there was one little girl that got killed. And it is tragic if that happened. For sure it is. One out of 4,000 terrorists who had these pagers blow up on them. Why is Israel held under such a microscope that the only way they can defend themselves is if there's absolutely zero collateral damage, yet Hamas and Hezbollah launch missiles daily into residential areas completely indiscriminately? They don't get the scrutiny. I mean, this was just brilliant. Brilliant. And John Cook saying, a commenter saying there was no explosives according to sources. Yeah, the sources are changing all over. Some are saying it was a type to force the batteries to overcharge and then heat up. Maybe, but that's quite a pop if you see some of the videos for just a battery. But who knows? Who knows? What most have been hearing, I've seen from sources, though, I mean, the TV movie that's going to be made from this, I'm sure will lay it out more. But it sounds like it was a Taiwan source for the pagers, and then it was made in Hungary somewhere, but they would have still had to be intercepted and reprogrammed to be able to go off. Who knows? It's tech beyond my ability, but it was brilliant. It was just brilliant. So they did this. Now this is set, of course, the Hezbollah world aflame. They are really running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And then today, when they started having funerals for the ones that did manage to get killed by these exploding pagers, they had swapped. They said, well, we've got to go down yet another level from pagers and we're going to communicate through walkie-talkies. Well, hundreds of those blew up today and blew up a bunch more of the idiots. It's beautiful. It's just magnificent. So these guys the terrorists are terrified. They don't know what to be afraid of, what not to be afraid of. They don't know what's booby-trapped. This is just magnificent. I mean, and people saying again, Israel and the terrorists, look what they did. Oh, come on. You know, Israel could have turned Beirut into glass years ago if they wanted to. They could carpet bomb the area. They could fire artillery into there constantly. No, instead, they targeted the terrorist yahoos with their pagers and blew them up. Yeah, John Cook saying, I guess they'll have to go back to smoke signals. They are out of options now. This could be, I mean, I've seen some other videos. This is how to escalate things. Escalate. Israel's been dealing with rockets, hundreds of rockets a week coming into their residential areas that they're trying to shoot down, coming from Hezbollah. Escalate, what are they going to do? Make Hezbollah attack them? Guys, that ship sailed. No, Hezbollah's running around. They don't know what the hell they're doing now. They've got thousands of castrated members running around, some blind. The levels and levels on how this is messed with Hezbollah is again, just beautiful. People are going to follow this as one of the most brilliant, planned military actions ever taken out in world history. It really was. I mean, now they're scared of their shadows. Now thousands of them have been taken out of the mix and injured. And you know what? Injured is worse than dead in many ways, because they walk around as examples and testaments to the other budding terrorists out there. The young wannabe terrorist might be looking and saying, Jesus, he's watching Uncle Ahmad shuffling around in his, testicle-less way and speaking in his high-pitched voice, thinking, maybe I'm going to break the family chain of going into terrorism and become a dentist or something, or a chef. I might reconsider my life career path. So this route has done something. And yes, things might escalate in a sense that, again, Iran's been funding these terrorists on the border of Israel for years. Israel's had enough. They have to defend themselves. They're pushing back. And now that Hamas is in such disarray with so many injuries, so much fear, so much confusion, they've lost their abilities to communicate with each other. If indeed there's going to be an entrance into, Lebanon, or to try and further clear them out, this would be the time to do it. Joe Mills saying perhaps they should try peace negotiations. Oh, kiss my ass, Joe. They've been doing that for years. Guess what? It's Hamas who rejects it every time. It's Hezbollah who rejects it every time. There's no negotiating with these people. They want every Jew dead. You can't negotiate with that. You can't. I mean, what do you expect? So instead, they went and blew the balls off a few thousand of them, and I think it's beautiful. Somebody said, how can you sleep at night just being so callous about it? I sleep with dreams of Hezbollah balls bouncing across the desert, and it makes me smile. Joe was being rhetorical. Okay, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. It's hard to get those across on social media, so I appreciate the correction. But yeah, there just isn't negotiation. I don't like the idea of ongoing war. I don't. I wish things could be settled there. I hope one day, some generations from now, they are. But in the meantime, an incredible tactical strike has been carried out. And you've got to give a thumbs up to Israel on this. The amount of planning, of secrecy, of coordination, of timing, it should strike fear into some of these terrorist arts. It should let them know, just like the ones who attacked the athletes in the Olympics in the past and others, Israel doesn't forget. They're patient. They will get you. It's going to take a while, but they'll get you. Maybe these Arab nations should start focusing on taking care of their own people instead of killing Jews for a little while, and they might do a little better for themselves. All right, so we'll get ready for my guest. It looks like it's going to be an outdoor hit from Dr. Sundberg there. So we'll tune into there, and we're going to talk a bit about immigration, crime, and some broad issues. Hello, Dr. Sundberg. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I am out in the beautiful Calgary afternoon here, so
yeah,
you can hear me okay.
You're coming in all right. Yeah, you might as well take advantage of the weather while you can. I'll give a little background. You're an associate professor, and your description so long, justice studies, and a visiting scholar at University of London's Royal Docks School of Business and Law. Boy, you cover a lot of stuff, Dr. Sundberg.
Wow, I like travel and I love learning, so it's and getting an international perspective is really important, I think, when we think of what we're dealing with.
Absolutely. So, I'm kind of turning a page from more international issues, but domestic. And so, a lot of discussions, whether it's the recent one with expanding schools, whether we're talking about healthcare, whether we're talking about housing costs, just the volume of immigration has been very challenging for us to absorb and deal with. But another aspect has been social disorder and crime. What sort of impact has, I guess, the spike in immigration had on those sorts of issues within, Western Canada or Canada in general?
By and large, it's really important to note that the by and large, most immigrants that come to our country are hardworking. They come here legally. They want to make a new life, and they want to contribute to Canada, and they want to uphold Canadian democracy. The reality, though, is that we do have a small portion of that group that enter Canada because of lax screening, because of the politicization of our immigration program, that are bringing their grievances and their ideology, their hate-fueled ideology from their own countries to Canada. And what this results in is we start to see really concerning activities with regards to, we saw here in Calgary, there was two groups of I believe it was the Eritrean community that had a fairly sizable fight. We've seen three people who came to our country that, in fact, were members of ISIS and were going to carry out mass killings here in Canada and the United States. And that's not the first time. We see others that came for the Via Rail bombing attempt that was foiled. We've seen others. So, by and large, it's a tough issue because when we have large amounts of immigrants, Calgary's finest there in the background. Again, sorry for being outside, but we have seen individuals that have been able to come to Canada primarily through our refugee program, coming from largely North Africa and the Middle East, who bring with them their beliefs and sadly their violence with respect to grievances that emerge from their home countries, and they bring it here, and we see it unfold in our own streets. This is really troubling, and it's because of lack of screening. It's because we don't put the effort into our immigration program, and also because we politicized our immigration program. Immigration is largely about economics, getting workers and skilled people. It's also about building our country and providing individuals who want to contribute to the Canadian way of life and Canadian democracy. We need to ensure that all immigrants want to be good Canadians, that they want to participate in our economy, and they're not going to bring the hate from abroad. So it's a challenging issue. But heaven forbid, if you speak about it, it can be a pretty hot topic issue.
Well, that's it. People get afraid of the topic because it is dicey. And as you said, nothing brings out sirens better than a live hit, I tell you. As you pointed out, most immigrants aren't criminals. There's some people who would like to try and label it that way, and that's incorrect. It's unfair. It's not right. But I guess from two fronts, there's things we got to deal with. One, with that initial screening, the ISIS terrorist we let in, all you had to do was Google search the guy. He had a video dissecting a man,
Yes.
in an execution. How did our most rudimentary of screening not catch this guy?
Frankly, we just don't have the technology and the officers in our system that have the capacity to adequately screen. We also don't have biometric screening, so we don't have when you enter the United States, you're giving your fingerprints, your photograph. We don't do that when you're coming into Canada. And the other thing is we don't have as many officers. We have just a handful of officers overseas that liaise with foreign governments so that we can identify threats before they come here. So we're dropping the ball in all sorts of areas. I served 15 years with what's today the Canada Border Services Agency. Sadly, it was the same then. It might even be worse now. And we have to stop relying on our foreign partners. Of course, we have to work with them, but we need to contribute too. In Canada, within the Five Eyes, which is Australia, New Zealand, the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom, we are known as the lazy eye out of the Five Eyes. So it's time for us to put our glasses on, see an optometrist, and start pitching in and doing our part to ensure we keep democracy, not just in Canada, but throughout the free world, free.
Yeah, and I don't want to I don't want to sidetrack into the full rabbit hole, but it seems we can't even clean the compromised people out of our own House of Commons, much less people trying to immigrate. So the second part of it, though, and that's where, again, more into the focus of your lifetime of studies, and it's a complicated one, but the next generation, the radicalized youth, I mean, often they're born in Canada. These are Canadian citizens. These are people how do we prevent them from becoming so disenchanted, so isolated, so radicalized that they're performing these kinds of crimes after the fact? I mean, we understand it was the parents who brought that, but they've put it down to the children. And now we've got multi-generational radicalism. How can we cope with that?
Well, when you think of how many people left Canada to go and fight for ISIS, that's a good lot of them came from Calgary. This is an issue. We need to have a better immigration orientation for newcomers. We need to have laws that are enforced. We have laws in place to when we have hateful rhetoric and this rise in anti-Semitism. We need to enforce those laws. And frankly, we need to put some more energy and effort and thought into how we screen people, from visitors to permanent residents to new citizens. And we've seen in the last few months, arguably the last decade, how our politicization and this crazy notion of ignoring immigration and plugging our ears and hoping that things will get better, that's the answer. Clearly, it's not. As soon as one of these people who has these hateful beliefs that has been radicalized enters the United States without detection and causes a terrorist attack down there, which is plausible. We saw it almost happen. That will have a dire consequence on our economy. And we saw what happened with Rassam. We saw what happened with others, where this has impacted our relationship with our largest trading partner. We have to do better as a nation, if not for our national security, for our economy. It's both. And we're just not doing that because we have currently a government that doesn't see border security and immigration control as meaningful or valuable. And they just want to open, we have an immigration system that's largely based on the honor system, and, it doesn't work. It doesn't work very well.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of dishonorable people out there. And it's something else is we've been so permissive on a particular group that is intimidating another one. I mean, if we had guys dressing up like Klan members and marching weekly in a predominantly black community, I don't think that would happen more than one weekend. But we've had a year now of targeted intimidation of the Jewish communities in Canada. Yet I understand free expression is very important. You can't just crack down every time there's a protest and start, belting people with the truncheons, but they're just getting bolder and bolder and bolder. And why are we putting up with this? Because it's messaging the other radicals that, hey, you know what? We can pretty much get away with anything.
Well, we're seeing it because it's coming from our universities, it's coming from our colleges, it's coming from, unfortunately, educators, my peers, my colleagues. We see the focus on EDI. I know at Mount Royal University, no mention of anti-Semitism. So I think the EDI program at Mount Royal is absolute garbage. If it doesn't include issues against Jewish hate and anti-Semitism, well, then that's just garbage. But this ideology, this very toxic belief in this intersectionality and these aspects are very damaging to our society, and it's fueling the radicalization. Instead of having some objective, well thought out scholarly arguments, we see misinformation, disinformation, and we see opinions being taught as opposed to actual fact. That's a problem. And a lot of this is being allowed and encouraged because of this, frankly, woke EDI ideology that is, in my view, very destructive to our social fabric. We need to get back and recognize that we don't choose what color of skin we're born with, and our charter allows us to have protections of association and freedom of consciousness. And when we have this toxic ideology that's jammed down people's throats, and then it's amplified by professors or other educators, this is what contributes to the radicalization. And it's very, very dangerous. As a member of Calgary's Jewish community, I'm very concerned. And as a professor, I'm equally concerned. Like, we should be educating, not jamming an ideology and opinion that's predicated on hate and false information down the throats of our students, because they believe what they get at university, because they're paying for it. So I really do think that the solution for our province specifically here in Alberta is that I hope that the minister responsible for advanced education takes a look at these EDI programs and identifies that they are part of the problem, that they are feeding anti-Semitism, mandatory anti-Semitism education. I know that's coming. That's great. And again, it's time we hold people to account and that there's consequences for their behavior. We're not seeing that. And individuals. I'm one of the few academics who's I'm tenured, so I do have some degree of freedom to express my scholarly informed thoughts. But I'm definitely the outlier. Most of my colleagues would think that things are great, and they're not great, or we wouldn't have encampments and we wouldn't have the hate that we see.
Yeah, and just to clarify for some people they might not be familiar with, I mean, tenure is a concept that's there to protect academics so that they can express things that may or not be the popular view, but It allows it to be openly explored. But it's not a rock solid protection. I believe Frances Widdowson used to be at the institution you're at as well, and she was tenured. It makes it more difficult, I guess, to stop somebody, but it doesn't stop all intimidation of academia.
No, and we're seeing that from the extreme radical left, the activist cadre of professors who are full on promoting and encouraging EDI to expand. That anyone who questions this toxic ideology, anyone who suggests that maybe it actually divides people and it encourages divisive beliefs and isolates people and cancels people, that flies in the face of academic freedom. But we do see that is commonplace, unfortunately, where we see efforts to silence opposition to the EDI woke ideology. It's starting to change. I'm trying my best, and I know that there's others. I'm doing my best to bring some attention to this, but I think that it's going to have government intervention. We're going to need to have the minister, who's great. We have a great minister of advanced education. I think just like we've seen in the United States, we have to start seeing an examination of what's happening on our university college and college campuses, and how much of this information is causing toxic society, this hate and this at each other's throats and this division. If we have public institutions that are contributing to that, I think that's a problem. I don't think taxpayers want to see their institutions being places where this hateful rhetoric and this toxic ideology spread into our society. Because our graduates go on to be lawyers, to be police officers, to be doctors and social workers and journalists and others. So we need to really take a look at the ground zero, which is our university campuses, where we're seeing pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, like with what you were just speaking on the earlier piece, like the people who openly support Hezbollah and Hamas, who deny the atrocities of October 7th. How can this be propagated and amplified by people who, like myself, who ultimately are paid for by the taxpayers, institutions that are paid by the taxpayers? Academic freedom aside, I think Orson Welles was quite accurate in 1984, the book a lot of us read in high school, that we're seeing this type of society emerge. We have to put an end to it. Otherwise, if it keeps going, we're in real dire straits.
Well, I guess one of the pieces of trying to fix that puzzle is having members of academia speak up and speak out. So I really appreciate you doing so, because I know there's pressures, and the easier route's just to put your head down and just, while away your time and just kind of look the other way. So hopefully others are going to speak up and we can correct this, because it's so important. It's important for the next generation as well, and people in general. So I really do appreciate you coming on to talk to us today. Before I let you go, where can people follow your work or see what you've been up to out there?
Well, I'm at Prof_Sundberg on Twitter or X. And then the Mount Royal University website, on my bio, I do have my CV attached there with links to some of my scholarship. So, I encourage people to communicate with their MLAs to say, you know what? My tax dollars are going to universities, and I'm not happy with my tax dollars going to amplify and promote and even further develop a toxic ideology. I don't want my kids to be going to an institution that this kind of nonsense is happening, where anti-Semitism is ignored, but microaggressions are mandatory education. Like, it makes no sense. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, it's beyond the pale. Well, thanks. I'll let you go, and I appreciate you tuning in from out there in the sun, and I hope we get to talk again sometime soon.
Anytime. I love your show, and I'd love to come back and speak further. So thanks so much for having me, and sorry that I am outside today. It's just how it all worked out. So
yeah, hey, better a little noisy than not at all. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much. Take care.
All right, so that is Dr. Kelly Sundberg of Mount Royal University, and a big, complicated issue, one we got to look at, and it really does take, there's so few, as some of the commenters are saying, that they're just not speaking up in academia as things are going wild with the ridiculous DEI stuff going on, the radicalization of people. I see one of the commenters, actually, John Cook, saying, question before you go, what started in 1984? I think what Dr. Sundberg was talking about was the book, actually, 1984, and talking about how, society it can be so radically changed and systematically, George Orwell's writings, of course. I believe that's what he was probably referencing. And, a lot of things get disturbing when you look at these radical protests, these extremists that are coming out and getting on the streets. But one of the things that's interesting at the university ones, it's one thing to see, I guess you could say, some of the radical new Canadians who are out there. You can typically tell or assume, I know it's hard to assume, but, with the accent and the outfits and just the way they look, that the chances are they're new Canadians. But when you see somebody who you can probably assume was born Canadian, probably, again, some typical middle-class white bread girl out there screaming Hezbollah slogans, what happened? How on earth did she become radicalized here? It's one thing to see it come through the family, or if it came upon you while you were in the different country, but how did this grow on you here? And so many like that's distressing. If you want to see a real, story of how bad that radicalism gets and how long it's been going back, look up Rachel Cory, Corrie. She's also known as Saint Pancake. She got radicalized 15, 20 years ago and went over to stop the evil Israelis over there in the West Bank because they were bulldozing tunnels where the terrorists were coming from. She was kindly teaching children how to burn American flags. Real saint, this young lady. And she managed to get run over by a bulldozer. Now, I worked around bulldozers. They aren't terribly fast. But either was Rachel. And she got squashed, but they canonized her. They turned her into a hero. No, she's a victim of idiocy, naivety, and radical ideology. She was from Oregon. She had nothing to do with what's going on over there, but she convinced herself that she was some freedom fighter for the downtrodden Palestinians, and now she's become fertilizer. Who won? wasn't good. But we're seeing that radicalization happening in our institutions, and we really do need to nip that in the bud. I mean, we'll never get rid of all of it. There's always going to be one lunatic or flake or somebody who comes out of the system, but when we see a pattern of it, we should be concerned. So it's good to see, again, some academics like Dr. Sundberg and others speaking up, because it's gone too far. All right, well, let's check in on some more news things. We didn't have Dave here earlier, but we still have Sean to check in with the news and business and energy and all those good things. How's it going, Sean?
Going well, Cory. How are you?
I'm all right. Like I said, I'm still dark humor. I know I'm a cold, nasty man, but although those terrorist balls getting blown up just made me smile.
Don't keep your phone in your pants pocket, right?
No.
Usually right about here.
Yeah. I mean, it's life without eggs. It can be challenging, I imagine, but there's a lot of relieved goats out there.
I'm sure there are. Yeah. So business stories. Well, the big business story today is what's an NHL team that hasn't won the Stanley Cup playoffs in over 58 years, or even made it past the second round? What's an NHL team like that worth?
I have no idea. Wouldn't have thought of it. But if you're talking about our good old Maple Leafs, they are an entrenched brand. It's still got to have value, though.
Well, apparently they are the most valuable brand in hockey, even more than the Montreal Canadiens. So Rogers is bucking up about $4.8 billion to buy out Bell's stake in the management company that owns the Leafs, as well as the Raptors and the Blue Jays. So that puts a few years back they bought about 75% of the team, and they split it 37.5 each, and so that values the team probably pretty close to about $10 billion.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's sad from the sports perspective. I mean, you think, winning would be what brings up the value of a team. But, I mean, I guess just loyalty, the branding, the merchandising, the ticket sales. I mean, even if your team stinks, hey, if you're bringing all that in, the value is going to go up from a cold business perspective.
The betting, the betting revenue. I forget what it is that Ontarians spent on betting last year in the first year of legal betting. I don't know if you noticed on the sports channels, all the sports books are basically in Ontario.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's already up around $2 or $3 billion.
Well, maybe the new ownership will still, I mean, it'd be nice for them anyways if they were actually winning as well as valuable. So
maybe we can only hope. It's not my team.
Careful.
Fan.
We're going to get the emails here in a minute.
chance.
Yeah, I know. I'm a football fan. I'm busy with that.
Yeah. So our old buddy Robbie Starbuck, who we're still trying to get on. Apparently, he's had his wife has had a baby, and it was kind of a problem.
Excuses.
Yeah, we've been playing tag. Anyway, so he went after Stanley Black & Decker. So Stanley Black & Decker is an exclusive brand here in Canadian Tire stores. They're the largest maker of power tools in the world. They make Craftsman tools, which used to be carried by Sears. I'm not sure who's carrying them now. But so he did his DEI.
Lawnmower, yeah,
that lasts forever. So he's taken his DEI crusade to them as well, and they caved. They got rid of everything. They got rid of their whole entire DEI department, got rid of all their programs, all their subsidies, everything.
It's just a dragon slayer, but with how quickly these big companies are reacting once he turns his sights to them, it sounds like maybe they were ready to kind of move away from that crap anyhow.
Well, it kind of makes me wonder that maybe whether this is kind of part of a bigger trend within the corporate world, that maybe it's kind of convenient for them maybe to kind of start getting rid of these things now, because it seems like the more companies that kind of fall under the wheel, the less newsworthy it becomes.
Yeah,
in a sense,
just get out. It's a good time to kind of divest of that thing. For new viewers who aren't as familiar, DEI is the diversity, equity, inclusion. That's when a company's focusing more on quotas and other things rather than productivity, which, well, it just isn't very a profitable approach to things quite often.
Well, or even compared to their customers, like
the best person for the
previous
job.
Targets were Harley Davidson and Jack Daniels, these kind of people that probably could care less about DEI. I'm sure that there's probably some LGBTQ home handy people out there.
Sure.
But I think the point is that you can still be that way if you really want to be, but why does the company have to specifically cater to that kind of a crowd?
The LGBTQ couple that is renovating their basement still wants just a reliable tool for the best price like anybody else.
I
I'm
would hope so.
sure that's their bigger concern when they go shopping for that skill saw, rather than whether or not there's a certain number of rainbows on the floor during certain months of the
for
year.
sure, and getting value for your dollar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we all do.
It's good to see the pendulum swing.
And finally, City of Calgary is putting up EV subsidies for the chargers. This time it's for the chargers in like apartment buildings and condos and multifamily things. The kicker on it, though, is they're putting up $4,000. So after next Monday, you'll be eligible to apply for up to $4,000 for a professionally installed unit. It goes for about $600 at Home Depot.
That sounds like the City of Calgary. They put the brilliant minds of the Green Line on the EV charger program.
And there's a local company.
Probably only have
here.
a cord that's that long as well.
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
lift your car into it.
Yeah, well, and there's a local company here in Calgary that installs them. They do the solar panels and everything, but they install the EV chargers, and they say they can do it for $500 to $1,600. So they're top, like, to install, you know, the level, and it depends on whether you have level 1, level 2, level 3 chargers, right? These level 3 chargers or whatever, they're like about 150 grand. But these
So
just
it's probably
overnight
like the ones
chargers.
they use for the buses that they still haven't gotten yet.
Yeah, the bus and the fire truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, so if you're going to park your car overnight in your garage, you know, you don't really need, you know, the high wattage, you know, charger. You know, $600 unit is probably good enough.
Yeah.
It would be even better if you could just plug the thing into the wall. But I think we're a little ways away from that yet.
Yeah, it'll get there, but it just seems that these idiotic programs are just lining people's pockets, not actually responding to consumer demand. But
Well, and the problem is that taxpayers are ultimately going to have to pay for it, right?
we always do.
You know, we just spent how many billion on a green line to nowhere.
Oh, and I'm going to close off with a little rant on that. So,
Okay, well, I won't preempt you then.
all right. No, that's good. It helps segue me. So, all right. Well, thanks for the check-in. I mean, they're mostly positive stories in the sense of pushback and DEI and things like that. So,
Yeah, and then, you know, the Maple Laughs.
Yeah, right. Maybe something new will come
Canada's
for
team.
those. Hey, they're loyal fans. I'll give them credit for that. I mean, boy, you got to be. All right. Well, thanks, Sean, and we'll talk to you a little later.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So that is Sean Polzer, yes, our news and energy and business reporter. He reports on all sorts of things. He's in the courthouse covering some other stuff I won't go into now either. But Sean's very diverse with his equitable coverage on things and including all sorts of stuff. For the Green Line, I just want to hit on that because, yes, it's made some news. Not everybody necessarily is from Calgary or is too familiar with this thing or what's going on with it. It's an expansion of the light rail transit from downtown Calgary now to next to nowhere. And this thing started back in 2015. I mean, they've been talking about it for decades. And in 2015, mayor of the time, Naheed Nenshi, announced, we've cut a deal. It's going to go ahead. We're going to break ground in 2017. We're going to have this thing reach from the far northern reaches of Calgary all the way to the far southern reaches. Is going to be a 49-kilometer train, and we're going to do it for under $5 billion. And it's going to be done by like 2023, 2024. Well, here we are today. Mayor Gondek, and Nenshi is now trying to become premier. Where's this Green Line? Well, nowhere. Nowhere at all. In fact, the province came out and said, we've had it. We're sick of you guys spinning your wheels, screwing this up, making a mess. It's now been cut down to like 10 kilometers long. The cost has gone up to $6.2 billion. And the timeline, again, it's 2024. They haven't laid an inch of track. Somehow they've pissed away $1.4 billion already. Gondek's crying the blues, so it's going to cost $800 million to get out of it. Well, it's still going to save us $6 billion, you incompetent boob. And yeah, you're incompetent. The people below you are incompetent. City administration is incompetent. Guess who they contracted this thing to? SNC-Lavalin. Yes, Trudeau's little buddy of a corporation. Inside dealing, crap, money going to Quebec, your tax dollars for nothing. Let's give an analogy. Let's say you wanted to get your house redone, the roof. So you talk to a roofer, he says, yeah, but you got to pay about a quarter of it up front, and I'll re-roof your house. Okay. And I'll have it done in, this is a real slow roofer. I'll have it done in 3 years. Okay, well, whatever, fine. 3 years later, well, I'm not quite done yet. Many years later, 9 years later, he comes back and says, yeah, I haven't really started on it yet, but now I'm going to raise the price by 20%. And I'm only going to do a quarter of your roof. And I get to keep the money you already gave me. What are you going to do as a homeowner? How long? How long are people expected to wait for the incompetent idiots in Calgary's City Hall until this thing is down to 1 kilometer and $12 billion? You got to pull the plug on this thing eventually. There's a term, if you want to look it up, called the sunk cost fallacy, because some people say, well, we're just throwing away the money spent already if we shut it down now. No, we aren't. We've been throwing it away already. Why throw more? Plus, some of that was land that they bought for the LRT anyways. Sell it. You get some of the money back. And we should be doing a bloody forensic investigation. Who are these crooks that sucked in? Because they're saying there's 1,000 people going to be put out of work. 1,000 people. Well, what the hell were they doing? Remember, not an inch of track has been laid down. They've been screwing you guys. They've been robbing you. They've been taking your tax dollars and giving you nothing. So yes, thank you, Premier Smith. Thank you, Devin Dreeshen. And to hell with you, Jody Gondek, for trying to defend this ongoing ripoff. If you'd just bloody well gotten some track on the ground, it'd be hard for somebody to say, okay, we've got to stop this. But you idiots took 9 years and spent $1.4 billion and got nothing built. So it wasn't that hard to make the case and saying, we're done giving you money. Now, fire her next year, Calgary. Fire her, fire most of that council, and vote for people who are saying they're going to flush city administration, because that's full of crooks and bureaucrats too. Either way, I'll leave on that rant. You know, we've had pagers blowing up balls, the province blowing up the Green Line, and the Toronto Maple Leafs just blowing up an entire generation of hockey fans. So thanks for tuning in today, guys. I appreciate it. Be sure to get on there, westernstandard.news/subscription. I forgot to mention it earlier. We're subscription-based, $9, $10 a month, $100 a year. It keeps us rolling. We're independent. We don't take tax dollars. Tune in next week. At this time, we will do it all over again. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. If the name Ted Byfield brings back fond memories, well, we got a party coming up for you guys. On September 25th, Toasting Ted is what it's called. It's going to honor a great conservative who published Alberta Report news magazine. It's going to be bagpipes, singing, live auction stakes, speeches by Premier Smith, Preston Manning, Stephen Harper, quite a lineup. The Western Standard is the final incarnation, or the latest incarnation, of Alberta Report that Ted Byfield founded. And I mean, he was a great Albertan. He really made his mark on this province, and this evening of celebration for him is really going to be outstanding. You get there, toastingted.ca. That's the website. You can get your tickets. This one's going to sell out. I mean, again, if you want to see Smith, Manning, Harper, all in one spot, one night, be sure to get there.